Well, welcome to Law Talk, my friends. A lot of questions coming in that you'd like to ask, you'd like me to ask Alexis Falvello. I want you to know that you could email them to me at sam@ssptv.com. I would love to talk with you on the phone for most of these people here, but I can't answer your legal questions. So if you could email me them, sam@ssptv.com, I'd appreciate that very much. Or go to favellolaw.com or 570-788-4191 is their phone number. And I'm sure they'd be more than happy to take care of you. Alexis Falvello, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I would be remiss not to offer condolences to you and your family on the passing of your grandmother,
Yes.
Marie Falvello, who was
Thank you.
like this with me and Tony. I mean, we're like
Yep.
brothers and sisters. And she was just a one great person.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she'd be truly missed. But God bless her. What, 90-some years old?
94.
94 years old.
Yeah, we were lucky. I was lucky to have her as my grandmother.
Yeah.
Certainly lucky to have her for as long as we had her in our life.
Tony was brilliant. Your grandfather was brilliant. She was just as brilliant as your
Right.
grandfather.
I think she was often overlooked.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we would sit and have conversations, and Tony and I would be talking. Of course, Tony never said that much until I kicked him, and then he would respond. But then Marie would say something and make a lot of sense. You know?
Yes.
I mean, and her food was unbelievable.
Oh, I know. She was valedictorian of her high school class.
Yeah.
And then she, at 19 had my father, and that was the first of 5. And every 2 years she was, having another kid. But then she went back to school, got her college degree, and then her master's degree.
Yeah.
When my uncle Chris, who's the youngest of the 5, was in high school. So, I mean, she really, I think, was a remarkable person altogether.
Yeah, she was funny too.
Yeah.
I would have conversation with you at your house, and we'd be sitting at the kitchen table, and she'd be cooking something, and I'd
Yes.
be talking to your dad, and
Yeah.
she'd turn around and say, "Sammy, why don't you become a lawyer? Why don't you become a lawyer?"
Yeah, I can
said,
see
"No,
her
I
doing
want to
that.
make an honest living in life." And so Tony would just give me a smile,
Right.
Yeah. Now, you have, she has how many siblings? Just so people know.
My grandmother?
Your grandmother.
So she had one who passed away, I believe he was in his 50s. I think she had one who passed away in infancy. And then my Aunt Carol, who passed away within the last 10 years. And then my Uncle Jimmy, who passed away.
Yeah.
So she was, I guess that's 5?
The last.
Yeah, total. Yeah, so she was the last surviving sibling.
Well, she will be missed.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
she already is.
All right, let's get down to business here. A lot of
Okay.
questions I get.
Okay.
And then they expect me to answer these questions.
Well, I hope I can
Maybe your
answer them.
grandmother was right. I should have been a lawyer. See, Marie, I'll tell you, she's there looking after me.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, okay. When developing a strategy for a case,
Yep.
do you discuss the possible outcomes and then who will actually handle my case?
Okay. So as far as case strategy goes, I primarily do car crashes, right? When a client comes in, we always want them to come in as close in time to the accident as possible. And really, circumstance is going to tell us what we need to do in the next steps in developing a strategy. Some cases, the policy limits aren't enough to compensate the victim for the damages. So you don't have to work those cases up as much because you don't want to put money into a case, because at the end of the day, that comes out of the client's bottom line. Now, if there are other cases where an individual isn't able to work, has a wage loss claim, might need medical attention in the future, and say the policy limits are, higher, and you want to work up the case to prove the value of the damages in the case, at that point in time, then you'd pull in somebody who's going to say, okay, the doctor's saying this individual can't work, right? Then you get a vocationalist to say, okay, with these restrictions on their work, this is their education, this is their work history, this is the projection of potential options that they have as far as earning an income. Mm-hmm. Or we could pull in somebody who can do a projection for what the potential cost of the medical care would be in the future. And again, that's only if there is a third party or a person who's liable that has insurance coverage that's, a higher amount, and you're pursuing, a higher amount of damages under those circumstances.
I guess you do you have an opportunity of this telling them what a potential outcome may come of the case?
It's tough to say, okay, here's a number, especially when somebody first comes in. I'll give an example. My first 7-figure case that I settled was an individual who was working as a nurse. She was in a pretty bad accident. And at first it looked like she was just having chronic, and not to minimize that because chronic pain is awful. She was having chronic lower back pain. That pain hadn't resolved, but because of that pain, then depression set in. So that kind of folded into the physical pain she was having. She was also having emotional pain. And when we looked to settle the case, initially, we had underestimated the value of the case because her treatment had progressed, her symptoms and her condition had progressed. So then we were able to ultimately then pursue and obtain 7 figures for her because she wasn't able to work, unfortunately, and she was in her late 50s when the crash happened.
What's the average time from someone coming to seeing you that was in an accident until you come to either a settlement or go to court?
Right. So I'm going to sound like a plaintiff's attorney right now, and for me, sometimes that depends on how reasonable the insurance company wants to be, right? So if you have a case that I feel has value, and the insurance company doesn't think so, then the case may need to be litigated. And that's just what you'll do on behalf of the client. Of course, you have the conversation with the client. Look, here are your options. Here's what's in front of us. We can litigate this or maybe settle for an amount that's a little bit less than what we had hoped to settle it for. Ultimately, that control lies with the client. Other times it's too premature to settle a case in the months after the accident because you don't know where that person is going to actually land as far as their well-being, right? So if you're looking at an individual who is seeking chiropractic care or physical therapy after an accident, that could progress to pain management. That could progress to injections needed. And if those measures fail, then potentially surgery, right? It just, again, depends on the progress of the treatment and whether or not the client responds to the medical treatment that they're receiving. I prefer to have about a year in time between the crash date and settling to give the client an opportunity to know, what their needs are going to be because of the crash, right? And that could be wage loss needs or medical needs, unless, again, the third party or the person responsible has lower amounts of coverage and we know the value of the case is worth over what that number is, then you can settle the case quicker, which isn't always better because the client's not getting the amount of damages that they should be getting under those circumstances. So,
when it comes to insurance companies, I know, not a large majority like to rip them off, okay? So I guess they're very stringent when it comes to making settlements or dealing with people. In some cases, people feel that the adjusters are just instructed to do whatever you can, but cut the cost, do this, cut here. Do you have, without naming the insurance company, are there some insurance companies that are good to work with?
There are, but I mean, it's just like attorneys, I'm sure. Some are a lot easier to work with than others. And of course, I work with attorneys all the time, or I work against attorneys all the time. At the end of the day, I see it as you work with them unless they make it more oppositional than it has to be, because you're really trying to come to a resolution, again, that's best for the client. So, and some adjusters are a lot more difficult than others, and it kind of just depends on the luck of the draw sometimes, Other times I'm surprised with the insurance companies. I mean, more often than not, there are moments that you have where you're like, I wish these people would understand that my clients are people too, and my clients are hurting, and look at it that way, but I'm sure they're instructed to be a bit more robotic about it. Like, here are the numbers, they've treated this many times, in what capacity, and we're going to do the math, and this is what we're going to put on a value of the case.
What are the percentages when you go to court against insurance companies?
So it depends on what you mean by going to court.
I mean, in other words, if you have 10 cases because the insurance companies did not want to settle or did not want to do that, you went to court, what percentages did you win?
So our fees are 1/3 of what the settlement amount is, right? If a case settles. Even if a case is arbitrated, which is kind of a trial in front of a neutral judge, with really more relaxed rules of evidence where you're not having to actually produce the doctor to testify, you can just produce the report. In those cases, it's 1/3. If the case goes to trial, our fee agreement says it's still 1/3, but if there's any appellate action taken after the trial, it's at 40%.
Do you handle criminal cases?
I will do traffic citations. Of course, I worked in the DA's office.
Yeah, should be a pro at this.
Oh, well, I did 8 years, and now I've been in private practice for 8 years, which surprises me. But the first call I got when I was all out of the DA's office was from an individual who was accused of assaulting a state trooper, and I would not be effective as a defense attorney. And not that people don't have the right to be, this is the foundation of the justice system. They're entitled to vigorous defense counsel. I would not be a vigorous defense attorney. I think I would struggle with that just because of the passion I had as a prosecutor in the DA's office.
I got you.
Yeah.
How about divorce cases?
That is not something that we do. We refer them out, so.
Why?
Yeah.
They're a lot of fun.
It's not my wheelhouse.
It's not a phone. What do you mean? So, what are you doing?
Yeah, no, I couldn't. That's not something I thought about it. When I was in law school, I did do, I guess, an internship in family law where I was able to practice as a certified legal intern. I had a trial before a judge on I don't know if it was a custody case or something family law related. But it's just, again, it's not, my heart's not in it. So.
Okay. Can you refer? You said you
Absolutely,
refer.
we can, yes. Yeah.
How about in criminal cases? You do the same thing?
I do refer criminal cases out, again, because there are attorneys
that just specialize in that.
They specialize in it and they do it well.
Yeah.
So, and that's what the client would be entitled to.
All right, folks, I'm talking to Alexis Falvello, Law Talk, sponsored by the Falvello Law Firm, falvellolaw.com or 570-788-4191. We'll be back right after the break. Well, welcome back to Law Talk, sponsored by Falvello Law Firm. Remember, folks, if you have any questions, please email me, sam@ssptv.com. I get a lot of questions. This is an interesting one. The person actually called me. No, I bumped into him and he came and said, I want you to ask Alexis Falvello. He said, I think it was his mother. Okay, he lives out of town. His mother was in a nursing home, etc. And she had a favorite, she loved this one grandson, nephew anyway.
Okay.
So what happened was they needed a POA, and she made this nephew POA.
Okay.
Now he was not happy with that because he was not notified, and he didn't think that she was capable of making him a POA. And how would he contest that?
So, first and foremost, if I'm the grandmother, right, the discretion to name somebody as your agent on a power of attorney lies with me as the grandmother. But the attorney, when the grandmother's coming in, will do an evaluation on the person who's looking to get a POA just to make sure that they're competent and they understand the important matter and the important matters that are in the document that they're signing as far as the power of attorney. I assume it was a financial power of attorney that he's referencing here. If he has concerns about the competency level of his mother, I would assume, or is this his grandmother? If he has concerns about the competency level of the individual who named somebody as their agent, you could challenge it, but you would need evidence to show why this woman was not capable of making a sound decision on her own.
It seemed that because he was out of town, he lives out of town, and he certainly was keeping in touch with how his mother was doing. He did not know that she needed someone to handle her affairs or whatever, I guess, with the POA.
Okay.
And so, because she loved this nephew, he, suggested he be a POA. And he's saying, well, no one ever told me that, and I don't think my mother's capable of knowing what she really did.
Right.
And here again, it goes back to what?
The why. Why don't you think she's capable? And can you establish that through evidence that she's not capable, essentially?
Assuming that, and I don't know what happened after that, he just wanted to get your opinion. Assuming that he went to his mother and said, Mom, you never told me this and this and this, and she says, well, maybe I made a mistake and shouldn't have made him, represent me. Could she change it?
She could, yep.
Oh, she could.
And any prior power of attorney would be revoked, and that language is in the power of attorney.
Okay.
That the new power of attorney, all powers of attorney revoke any prior powers of attorney.
What should you look for before you make someone your POA?
First and foremost, trust. The financial power of attorney, on the face of it, has a notice page, and it's in all bold lettering, and it's in all capital lettering. And I smile because it just reminds me of my father used to send me notes when I was in college in the mail when I played basketball about how, just to get after it when I played in these basketball games. But it's intended to be aggressive like that because you are putting so much on the line by naming somebody as your agent. Essentially, your agent can act on your behalf and do anything you otherwise would be able to do from a financial point of view. And as somebody, my mom's a cancer survivor. She had a financial power of attorney. When she fell ill, she was running a business. She was the only person that had access to those assets, to that business. So the financial power of attorney was vital for me to be able to utilize her finances, to continue on then with her business and other matters that were.
All right, so you're in a good frame of mind, and you make the person the POA, and there's a financial matter that comes down the road, and you say, I don't think we should do that.
Right.
The POA says, no, we're going to do that. Who has the right here?
Well, the individual the person who is authoring the power of attorney, right, who's giving the agent the power, maintains first and foremost the control over their own finances, unless and until they're unable to do it themselves, and then they have to trust the individual that they've named as an agent. The agent then signs an acknowledgement page that says, essentially, I'm not going to do any funny business when utilizing the power of attorney on behalf of whomever it is that they're named as the agent for. And they also have to make decisions that they think that person would make under any of the circumstances presented. And again, I just draw from my own experience. My mom had a financial planning business. She fell ill. She was inpatient for almost 3 months. She was not competent. She had, brain bleeds. She had, she was ICU psychosis. She was not competent. And it got to the point where there were conversations had about, okay, should we close her business? And that was tough for me because she had worked so hard to establish that business, and it was tough for me to determine what would she want under those circumstances. Now, ultimately, thankfully, she got better and I didn't have to make that decision, but these are choices and decisions that your agent is faced with when named as an agent.
Okay, so when do I know when it's right to sue somebody?
Right.
I'm asking a lawyer that question.
Yes, yeah.
Sue them.
Well, I know. Everybody, so, some people, and some attorneys do have preferences, the sue happy, of course, we hear that a lot. And, I can understand that. I'm not going to say that all attorneys are, tip top, but most of us, I'd like to think are in the profession. Having said that, when to sue, I think, and this has been my answer, throughout this show here today, but it just depends on the circumstances. So in Pennsylvania, if you're in a car crash, you have 2 years to pursue a claim or settle a claim. And if the claim isn't settled, you do have to file a lawsuit. Otherwise, any rights you have will be waived. So sometimes the law will tell you, okay, it's time to sue.
That's a important question, because elderly people who were, you know, born and raised, worked all their lives, and have moral values, you know, they're hesitant in trying to hurt anybody, even though something happened to them, and I don't know, the insurance is taking care of this, and why should we sue the person?
But there's a distinction there. So the assumption is the insurance is taking care of this. I think what's not understood is insurance isn't taking care of it, and that's the problem, right? So, you know, if insurance was taking care of it, they'd pay up on the claim, you know, for the value that, you know, is reasonable under the circumstances. So it's not always that you want to file a lawsuit. And I understand, you know, where people, because we get a lot of clients that say that, you know, and they don't want to cause a fuss. And, you know, but the flip side is I see with these clients, you know, their pain, and that's on a daily basis, and it can affect all aspects of their life. And if there's an insurance company who's not willing to pay up on the value of the claim, then sometimes you're forced into litigation.
You're looking at, you know whether the case is suable or not.
Right.
So you're not going to do any frivolous lawsuits here.
No, certainly not. And that's not good for us as practicing attorneys. You know, but you can look at, part of what our job is you kind of take the lens back and you look at all of the circumstances. And then given all the circumstances, you talk to the client, right? And you have conversations as far as how the case is going to proceed. Because sometimes you can have a case that's settling for, like, the offer is a little less than what you think it should be, but you can try the case. And if you try the case, you're going to have to put more money into the case that ultimately then could land the client with less money in their pocket. So you could try the case, get more money as a verdict, but you'd be walking away with less as the client because the cost it took to get that number.
I think that's where the experience comes in.
So, you know,
and knowing what to do.
Right, and that's how you draw the lens back and you have these conversations with the clients.
Alexis Falvello, my friends, Falvello Law Firm, 788-4191-570, falvellolaw.com. We come back, an interesting question. How do you describe the difference between a good lawyer and a bad lawyer? We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Law Talk, my friends, brought to you by the Falvello Law Firm. If you need any lawyers, they're the law firm to call. Now, Alexis Falvello is here. My question to you, my question that came in, interesting question. How do you describe the difference between a good lawyer and a bad lawyer?
Well, I think there are a couple things that you want to look at when, you know, choosing an attorney. For me, as a matter of personal choice, but also for what I think is best for the client, you want an attorney who's going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, right? So, you know, as far as certain cases, if there are certain expectations, if there's risk involved, you know, again, these are conversations I think that a good attorney should be having with their clients so their client can make a decision that's informed and that's best for the client. So I think when looking at an attorney, you want somebody who's going to have total transparency. So if there's a client who's treating, they're in pain, they're not going to the doctors, you know, you should go to the doctors if you're having pain. You know, I mean, and that's, you know, you would want that honesty, I think, with an attorney. You also certainly would want somebody who's going to be responsive to your emails, your phone calls, you know, and that's, again, is part of the communication thing and the transparency thing and being, you know, an attorney who's able to inform their clients so they can make a decision that's best for them.
And of course, past reputation means a lot as well.
I think so, you know.
I mean, 100 years you've been around, so you think
we have been.
It's 100 years.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's always a concern. You know, there's a lot of jokes about lawyers, but when you need them, you want to make sure you get the very best and one you can trust. You know? Falvello Law Firm, my friends, 570-788-4191. Go to their website, falvellolaw.com, and my email is sam@ssptv.com. Please email me your questions. I'll be more than happy to present them to Alexis Falvello. See you next time.